Lizanne, how are you?
Hello, I'm well, Gareth. How are you?
Cool, thanks. Yeah, good. How's your day been?
Oh my gosh, I've had such a good day. We just came back from a kayak, and there were some whales in the bay. So yeah, we were basically kayaking with some whales, which was really nice.
Yes, that's
That's awesome.
amazing. Like, how far away were they?
Oh, like 10 meters.
Oh
Wow.
man, wow.
Yeah, it was really cool.
That's so cool, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, Craig, you're in London.
No, on the Gold Coast in Australia, and Gareth's in London.
Okay, okay, wrong way around. Okay.
Like like you saw the other day, I got so confused with the times. It's still
Happy
happening.
birthday, by the way.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was a good day.
I'm pumped to
You,
chat to you. I've got so many questions for you.
yeah. You guys were so well researched. Did you see could you see my comments in the
Yeah.
drive on the
Thank
Google Drive?
You did a
Awesome.
great job of that. You, by the way, you were the most thorough person to ever answer our questions. So
Ah, very cool.
by far.
Um, awesome. But so, did you guys follow us when we did it, or have you backtracked and gone through all the stuff?
Yeah, I caught it as when it came out on Netflix.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's when
Very,
and then from when I watched that, I was like, wow, that I definitely want to have a chat to you.
very cool.
It just seemed really, really, obviously it's an interesting story, but, and obviously you being South African, it just adds like another dimension of interesting to us anyway.
Yeah,
And, and I mean, we don't have a South African slant per se on our podcast, but
sure.
obviously both being South African, it's like a little bit more interesting for us as well, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
And it's nice to pump up awesome South Africans that are doing cool stuff as well. Like, why not? So it's a bit of a
yeah.
combo.
Awesome.
Yeah. So and then one day we were sitting in Madrid going, man, we talk a lot, kind of thing, and we like enjoy chatting about interesting people. We should just record our conversations. And we were like, oh, sweet. And then a few months ago, Gareth's like, well, when are we going to do this, guys? And yeah, so we went ahead with it now. So yeah, it's cool. That's basically what we're doing, just
Very
recording
cool.
our chat that we'll have with you that we would probably have if we were sitting with you anyway, like same kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, awesome. It's very cool.
Great chat.
Awesome.
Not feel all knackered now. It's always quite tiring
Yeah.
having a good chat when you're doing the chatting.
Oh my gosh, that was like 2 hours on the dot. Have you
Yeah,
seen?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
Sharp.
amazing.
Crazy hot, but
You
anyway.
started at like 5?
Yeah, that's
Oh
great.
my gosh, I'm so
You didn't notice?
not at all. You look fresh as a daisy.
Woo, get ready for work. Good.
Yeah.
Thanks again for your time. Thank you so much.
It's not a problem. Thank you. Guys have been really awesome
Great.
interviewers.
That's so kind of you. Thank you very much. Awesome, my man. Yourself?
Kif, bud. That was a kif
Yep.
chat, man.
That was lekker, bud. Thank you so much, man.
Got a lot, man. Yes, but it's crazy how you can just touch the surface, man, in 2 hours. But I feel like we didn't ask, there's so much interesting shit that we could have asked,
Insane stuff, bud. You know what I mean? Like, just like I like the time
The detail.
flew. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like I was like, oh my god, I literally had so much things I wanted to go into, but
Oh,
still, like, what a cool chat, eh? I reckon.
about kif chat, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, what a cool person. I
Yeah.
really think.
Craig, my man, how's it going, brother?
I'm pretty awesome. How about you, my man?
Yeah, I'm really awesome. Thanks, bud. Feeling really cool today. Just had a cool chat last night with you and some guests. How's your day been? How was your drive to and back from work today?
Yeah, pretty good actually. Didn't feel sick at all, which is, always a positive thing when you're in the car. I know some people get some mean car sickness, and I'm luckily not one of those.
Yeah, no, I'm also super lucky, and it's kind of like I just feel so bad for people that do, and it's quite a horrible feeling, isn't it? Because you've actually suffered from like motion sickness on boats before, haven't you?
Yeah, I've had it once before, and it was devastating. It was one of the worst experiences because it's this intense nausea that you just can't get rid of, and it's like you just can't escape it. It's terrible. Have you ever had it?
No, I don't know why. Like I've just been super lucky that I don't actually get it. So that's really a cool thing. But our guest this week, Lizanne Van Vuuren, is quite a remarkable lady and rowed across the Pacific Ocean for 97 days straight as part of a team of the Coxless crew. And from day one, she was seasick, and she was seasick every single day. I mean, that's just crazy.
Wow, I honestly, I could not think of anything worse. It's like that little taste that I had of it, excuse the pun, I guess, was, like so bad. And she just, the way she talks about it is so matter of fact. She's just got this toughness about her that she just gets on with things. And I know it's like seems a bit silly that she's done so many amazing things, but that's one thing that stood out for us, that she just kind of just knuckled on and never gave up the whole time, and never said, "Oh, I'm too sick to carry on."
Yeah, it's rather incredible. She just kind of sucked it up and dealt with it, every single day. There was points where she would just lean over the side of the edge and have to vomit because she was seasick. And it's rather incredible, the toughness and mindset that it takes to deal with that day in, day out is truly remarkable indeed. And it's something that I think has helped her, I'm sure, like since the trip, in her everyday life. There are so many lessons on that trip that she's taken forward now.
Yeah, 100%. Lizanne is a woman who, when she wants to do something, she does it, and she puts her mind to it. And like you said, it's all about preparation, making up your mind, and then knowing why you're doing something. Like, why am I actually going ahead with something? And I think one of the big lessons there was it's so important in life to find out what your whys are. And I think that's become quite popularized, these days. A lot of people go on about it. But it really makes a difference. There's no ways you can row across the Pacific Ocean for fun. You have to have the right reasons for doing so. And these ladies that Lizanne rowed with are just all just incredible people, and their why was also really, really important. So what did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it is becoming quite popularized, why you do things and to have a purpose in life and all these things. And they are super important, so that it kind of gives you a bit of direction and a bit of meaning in life. But the other thing that I also thought was key in this chat was the sense of adventure, and listening to some of these stories about being out there in the big, wide, blue ocean, is just insane. Like, it's almost impossible to imagine what it's like, never ever seeing land, but then at the same time, when she talks about the stories of like waking up and the water is just entirely flat and the sun is rising and there's no sound, you kind of get goosebumps and you want to be there. It's just, wow, amazing.
Yeah, I think not only was the adventure such an important thing, and that's a massive adventure, let's be honest. But I think what we can take from it is it's such a good idea to have adventure in your life, get yourself out of your comfort zone, and just do something that you just don't think you could possibly, or why would I necessarily do that for any other reason than just to push myself and test my own boundaries. Because when you get back to sort of normality, normal life, you have a different frame of reference for challenges. And I think that's just so important for us to all try and do throughout our lives, just to become better people overall, actually.
Yeah, 100%. She touches on it a few times, just the fact that it's important to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and it does grow you and it does make you a better person in the long run, that's for sure. Prepares you more for the challenges that life will throw at you. So I think now is a good time as any anyway for us to find out what it's like for Lizanne Van Vuuren to be ridiculously human.
All right, so here we have Lizanne Van Vuuren. Good morning. How's it going? Thanks for coming on.
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be talking to you guys.
Awesome. How's your day been?
It's been amazing. So it's actually evening at the moment. And we had a really exciting kayak out on the ocean in Sea Point. And we were kayaking with some whales, which was amazing.
Ooh, yeah, wow. Is kayaking something that you do often out in Sea Point?
It's actually not, but I quite like to do it when there's a group of us and we just go out and book a spot, and just it's always nice to get back out on the ocean, but it's not actually something that I do that often. Training
as well, or just a fun day out kind of thing?
Well, yeah, so I'm busy training for the Cape Town Cycle Tour, which is happening in March. So I did do a bit of training, but that was cycling. And then, the kayaking was really just leisure. It was just to go whale spotting, really.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
And how many of you were out there?
So there were 5 of us, my friends, 5 in our group, and then there were about another 6 people. So about 12, including the instructor, which was really, it was a nice group. And then the more the whales came up and put their tails up, the more people came out. So there were quite a few of us out in the ocean, which is really nice.
I swear your heart was like skip a beat. Like surely when you see one of those things come out the water, you must go like.
Yeah, you do. I think you definitely you hold your breath a little bit, but I definitely had a few screams because it's oh my gosh. Yeah, it's really, because they get so close and then they pop up from nowhere. They go down for about 7 to 9 minutes and then they just pop up anywhere. And then one of the times today, it popped up so close to us, which was a little bit scary. But it's such an amazing thing to be able to go out there and just see these animals just kind of living and just being, they were so calm as well, which was, they're just amazing.
So how was the ocean this morning?
It was beautiful. It was very flat, a little bit of wind. We've had a lot of wind recently, but it was just generally, it was one of Cape Town's golden days.
Yeah. Have you had any sign of rain there yet?
Oh my gosh, have you heard?
Yeah,
We're about to run out of water.
Wow.
We haven't, so we're definitely patiently waiting. Hopefully that will come soon, before April, because that's when apparently the water is going to be turned off. So we'll see.
So do you mind if we just chat about that for a second? So you have a limit of 50 liters a day per person. And that includes literally everything. So you're showering, you're washing up. How does it impact your day? I guess you might be you kind of used to it from probably being on the trek that you did across the Pacific. But what's it like being in South Africa on the ground with that?
Well, it's something that I'm very passionate about at the moment because you get people who are amazing and really work together to save water, and then you get other people who don't really grasp how huge this is for our environment, not just environment, but just for our living situations. So yeah, we've had to kind of we've had a limit of about 87 litres per person for the last couple of months. And as of 1st of February, that's now 50 litres. And yeah, it's everything. So we're being really quite creative in how to save water. Basically implementing a grey water system, so trying to recycle a lot of the water, like shower water going into the toilets and, you know, that kind of stuff. I think I wouldn't say I'm used to the like using lots of very little water from the boat, but I'm definitely equipped for it if I have to. I think, yeah, I'll be absolutely fine. What we used to do is have these squidgy camel pack drinking bottles, and then just kind of showering with that. So I think, yeah, I'll definitely find creative ways to get around that problem. But it's a huge problem in Cape Town at the moment, and I'm not, you know, I think a lot of people can't really believe that it's going to happen. It is pretty unbelievable. So hopefully it doesn't happen, but I mean, we do need a lot of rain before April.
It's crazy. It's just, you know, we just take so many things for granted, don't we? And I guess it is kind of difficult for people just to fathom that, okay, literally there's no more water. Like, for whatever, there's so many reasons why that is, and how you know, the government could have done more, whatever it may be. It's still like the situation is still that, and it must be such a strange feeling. And it must also be really frustrating seeing people doing wasting as well. I'm sure that still happens, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's definitely made me realize how much water I used to waste, like even just kind of brushing your teeth and letting the water run. I mean, that's such a normal thing to do, but now you're literally closing the taps whenever you can. And yeah, there are definitely, unfortunately, some people who, you know, still water their garden. So, I mean, everything is brown at the moment. But you still get these, you know, amazingly pristine gardens. And a lot of people do have, they've had boreholes dug in their gardens, which obviously helps, but there's also not an endless supply. So yeah, interesting times.
Yeah, it's crazy. I remember I was probably about to insult you just now, but in an indirect way, I remember when I used to go to the gym and stuff like that, and you'd have a shower afterwards. I've always, I don't know why, but been very conscious about water for whatever reason. I don't know why, but I would be having a shave, and I would turn my water off and make sure, you know, I only use it when I need it. And then there'd be oaks next to me, just water full on, and I would be getting angry while I was shaving. I was like, yes, but you know, you want to say something, but you don't say anything.
Yeah.
Because you're oh, is it my place to even say it?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, people are getting quite vocal about it now. So if you're seen watering your garden, or even washing your car, or any, people get so quite upset about it, and rightly so, I think, and very passionate. So you can be fully expected that someone will come up to you if you're seen doing stuff like that or wasting water. So yeah, I mean, I think as a global movement, it's a really kind of a good thing, because it really just has made people so aware of how precious this is, and how there's nothing that can replace water. We had a few power outages, and with power you can totally survive, with gas heaters and gas stoves and candles and that kind of stuff. But with water, there literally is no other replacement. And it's really sad because we live next to an ocean, and the ocean is about 200 meters from my front door, and we're not using it, which is really sad. And obviously they're looking into that, but it's a little bit late at the moment. So we just kind of, you know, need to make do with what we have.
Yeah, I think we'll come to that later on, but I mean, you had a desalinator on a small little boat, and you think, come on.
There's really so much water in this world. I mean, the ocean, it's mind-blowing that you could be out there for literally 97 days, not seeing one piece of land. And we really have a lot, and we're not using it. But I also understand it because, you know, there's obviously environmental impacts on the ocean and the rising salt levels in the water and that kind of stuff. So it's got to be done properly. But I mean, I've definitely considered bringing Doris over and just having her docked by the side and getting her water.
So just to put today's chat a little bit into context, Lizanne, a little while back, obviously, I was watching some Netflix, as one does, and I saw a show, Losing Sight of Shore, and I thought, oh, this looks really interesting. And there was a few girls, a late woman, that decided to row a boat across the Pacific, quite a long way. And you were one of those amazing women that decided to take this trip. And so Gareth and I just had to have a chat to you, and so we're very grateful for you coming on to chat to us today. So, but what we like to do is to just, you know, start off at the very beginning and just try and get a sense of who you are as an individual in the sort of bigger picture. And so you grew up you were born in South Africa, and then you moved over to the UK. Give us a little bit of your background of your childhood and how it was and what you got up to.
So I was born in South Africa, and that was, I mean, a very outdoor lifestyle. I was pretty much a tomboy of just running around outside, and I have two brothers, so we were always doing something outside, climbing trees or playing games or whatever. So that was, I mean, I think that was an amazing childhood to have, and we've got some amazing fond memories. And then when I was 9, so I mean, still part of my childhood, but when I was 9, we moved to the UK, and I think we just carried that on. I think our neighbors and like my school friends thought, like, who are these like strange African creatures who are like coming into the, you know, very like prim and proper England. But, you know, it was amazing. We've got a really close-knit family, and I'm very, very lucky to have that. So childhood was just very carefree and very much outdoors and sporty and always running around and doing something. So, yeah, I was very fortunate to have that.
And whereabouts in South Africa were you born?
I was born in Rustenburg, which is Northwest Province. Like if you look at the map, it's pretty much just below the border of Botswana, is where I grew up in a tiny little town called Zeerust. And we have both our grandparents quite close to there, and they both lived on farms. So, yeah, I was very much a farm kid spent a lot of time on the farms until we went to England. But we kept really close connections to South Africa. So we came back for holidays, obviously, and Christmases, and came to visit friends and family. So we still had that connection very closely. And then, so I grew up, I guess I went to school in the UK and did my studies as an osteopath in London. And then after my studies, I wanted to just go and explore and work abroad somewhere. So I saw a job opportunity in Cape Town, and I was like, oh my gosh, that'll be amazing to just go back to South Africa, but mostly Cape Town as an adult and just kind of experience life out here. So I came thinking I was going to stay for 1, maybe 2 years, and I've been here for about 7.
Wow.
Nice.
So yeah, it's just been amazing. Honestly, it grips you, and just you can't really imagine leaving.
So you've still obviously got a few mates and that kind of thing back in the UK. What about your family? Are they still over there, a lot of them, mum and dad?
So yeah, mum and dad is still in England. So I go over often. I go about twice a year to go back and visit them. And obviously I've got, all my school friends and uni friends back in London as well. Or back in England. So I go back there quite often just to kind of keep the ties there. And then obviously with the row, the girls are all in the UK as well. So that gave me opportunities to go back very often as well. And then my two brothers, my younger brother actually came out and studied in Stellenbosch, which is
Cool.
about 45 minutes from me, which is really nice. And then my older brother, he was in London and now is in Switzerland.
That's cool. And
Yeah.
what was the reason for moving to the UK?
I think it was the same reason a lot of families left around that time. So we left in 1998. Um, and, you know, I mean, apartheid obviously finished in 94. And being in a really tiny little town, you did kind of start to notice a few of the changes that happened. And not all of the changes were negative at all. Obviously, it was something that had to happen. But I think just the impact started definitely in the small towns. And I think my parents just really wanted to create a life for us that we had, just maybe a better education or more opportunities and, you know, the standard type of move. But yeah, and we're all three of us are incredibly grateful that they did that for us because it opened a lot of doors. I definitely wouldn't be an osteopath if I'd stayed in South Africa because it's not even available as a course over here. So extremely grateful for them. And I think being in South Africa now, having the option to go back to the UK if I wanted to, is probably why I'm still here. Otherwise, maybe I would have tried to move elsewhere. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, I just love it here. So yeah,
That's
we'll see what
awesome.
happens.
And your parents, so your dad was a dentist, right? So you come
That's
from
correct.
coming from a bit of a medical background, and mum, what did she do?
My mum's music teacher by kind of profession. Yeah, so also grew up playing lots of instruments. And then she kind of went into teaching and then in kind of, you know, since we were kind of in school and left school, she's just been helping out at my dad's practice,
Awesome.
running the show.
And sorry,
Yeah.
did you say that you play musical instruments?
Yeah.
Ah, cool.
Yeah.
What do you play?
So I play piano and guitar.
Wow.
And I sing, and then I did a bit of a stint playing flute. I haven't played that in such a long time though, but yeah, I mean, music's a really important part of my life. So I like to dabble.
Ah, that's cool. So, like, do you practice it much at home these days?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't have my piano with me, but yeah, I've got a guitar, so I often, I mean, around the typical thing like around campfires, it usually comes out. But yeah, I'm in my we have a church band, so I'm in that, and that's kind of maybe twice a month or so I'll play that. And then we had a small little band just for fun where we played covers and stuff. So yeah, I like to do it, you know, whenever I can. But I guess like anything, there's not really a lot of time to commit to that.
Yeah.
Well, here's a platform now, you know, to expose your voice.
No way.
I think that's very important to have a creativity, like have some kind of way of being creative, and I think music is obviously one of those amazing ways of being able to do it. It's so good for your brain and everything, as you would know.
Definitely.
Obviously,
It's
so
such a good outlet. I mean, I think like you can have outlets in different ways. Like running is another really good one just to kind of de-stress. And yeah, music is another one of those. And you don't necessarily have to play, but maybe just kind of get a good playlist together and, you know, either meditate or go for a walk or whatever. It can just completely change your mindset.
Yeah, 100%. Like Craig and I both, like, we're big music fans. I always think maybe like in a past life I was a musician, like, because in this life I've got
It's never too late.
yeah,
eh?
I've got a piano and I've got a guitar, but I'm useless. Like, seriously, I went for lessons and I was like, okay, no, I just don't have this in me.
Oh,
But
you
it's
should
funny.
carry on.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things I would dig to, but I guess it's you know, it's just finding the time to do it.
Exactly, yeah.
It's quite tough. So have you ever been back to Rustenburg by any chance?
I have, yeah. I've still got one set of grandparents that live in a town about 2-3 hours from there. So we sometimes go visit them. In fact, I'm going this coming weekend to Mafeking, well, a farm just past Mafeking, and then you go pretty much through Rustenburg to get there.
Wow, that sounds cool. And so just a question about the family. So with a surname like Van Vuuren, were you an Afrikaans family?
Yeah, very much so, like completely pure Afrikaans. These grandparents that I'm talking about don't really speak any English. We grew up Afrikaans at home. And then I guess when we went to the UK, we just had to have extra English lessons. Pretty much the only English that we knew, we learnt from Disney films. So it was pretty limited. But yeah, I mean, at that age, you just pick it up so quickly.
I can just imagine you like you said, tomboyish, you've been on the farm, speaking English, and the other kids are like, wow, look at you.
Yeah, no, exactly. What a transformation. From, like, if I see some of my friends, that first saw me when we came back from, when we moved over from South Africa, they're just like, wow. I remember when you had this really strong South African accent. Yeah.
Yeah, you probably were running around barefoot in school playground and stuff.
We were. You laugh, but we did. And I think everyone was like, what are these people doing?
That's awesome.
That's classic. And kind of at what point is the crossover of the accents? Did it happen for you? I mean, did it happen quite soon?
I have no idea. I can't really hear myself with an accent. I know it sounds strange. I can't even put on a South African accent at the moment. I think I've got some twangs, but I have no idea. I wouldn't even know when to guess.
It's definitely not. It's not a strong accent by any means at all. But you discussed yourself being quite into your sports and music and being a bit of a sort of a go-getter. You've done a number of things, and one of them is you got involved with the Ironman series. Is that kind of your point where you kind of decide? Well, talk us through how you got into that and why you wanted to do that, so we can understand the mindset of someone that sort of takes that sort of route.
So I think I did the half Ironman in South Africa, and I honestly never thought that I'd be able to do it. So a few of my friends did it and were doing it again. So I thought, okay, I'll just, apply. But how it actually happened was I watched a TED talk by Meg Jay called 30 is not the new 20. And it just changed my life, because immediately I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to do something. And I literally went on and I just entered the half Ironman. And I was like, cool, now I need to find out what I actually need to do to accomplish this. So I joined a training group, and that was sort of 6 months of really intense training. And honestly, I thought that I was going to finish my race and die. I was very prepared to just kind of fall on the floor and that's it. So, but the amazing thing was that, I did the half Ironman, finished it, and we were all so excited. So you go back to the kind of welcoming tents and you're chatting around, and everyone's talking about the race, how was it for you? And we had a burger and then a massage, and then we went back to the house, got changed, went to the awards ceremony, and then ended up getting to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I remember going to bed thinking, how is it, how am I still walking? And, and that's actually where this whole row thing actually came about as well. Because I started being completely fascinated by our mental ability to push our body through pretty much anything. So, yeah, I mean, then naturally when the row came up, I kind of had a similar mindset, but yeah, so I mean, maybe we can cover that later. But I mean, the half Ironman was really it was amazing. I definitely think anyone can do it. It's not that hard as long as you can train. Yeah, but it was, such an incredible experience.
And which half was that?
It was the East London one.
Okay, cool. That's quite early on in the season, isn't it? It's like March or something.
Yeah, it's January. So it's,
okay,
I think it's literally just been,
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it's quite a toughie from what I've heard, and it's like also can be pretty treacherous in terms of like the conditions, as in quite windy.
Yeah, exactly. It was I think one of the hardest cycle routes because it's like quite hilly, like up and down, up and down. And then very often you cycle out and then you turn around and come back, and very often you're against the wind on your well, halfway, like all the second half back. And that, yeah, I mean, that was so tough, but the support out there was incredible as well. So, I mean, that helps as well. It definitely pushes you through some dark moments.
It's amazing how like other people, I don't know what that is when you're doing something like that. When just hearing the support of others, it really makes a difference. It just shows you, I think,
Absolutely.
Races like you mentioned it, like races like that, any endurance thing like that really pushes your mental state to see where you're at, but then also shows you like what a difference support can make, or what someone's kind words can make. And
Absolutely. No, it makes all the difference. Like, I think if you had to do that race on your own, I can't even imagine what that would be like. But it's just so incredible, the kind of, I don't know, the second wind you get with a bit of support. Yeah.
Very cool.
And so if we can just like backtrack a little bit, sorry, to your move from South Africa to the UK. So you said you were 9 years old. Is that what you said? 9? Okay.
Yes.
And what's the sort of conversation your folks had with you at the time? They say, look, we're moving for this reason, and what was your kind of thoughts at the time?
Excuse me, guys. My computer just said that it is going to restart. So let me just quickly pick a time. Sorry, Gareth, do you want to just ask that again?
No worries. So just to kind of backtrack a little bit, I just would like to find out the conversation your folks had with you when they said, okay, cool, we're going to be moving from South Africa to the UK. You know, as a 9-year-old, I guess you kind of don't really mind, but at the same time, you've got your buddies and everything. What was your reaction and your thoughts at the time?
Well, I think so. How my parents did it was they went over to the UK first to go and check it out on like a holiday, and I guess we all just kind of thought that they went on holiday just for fun, and then when they came back, I think they started getting everything into motion without really telling us too much. But the conversations they eventually had with us wasn't too long before we actually left, maybe a few months. I can't actually remember that much, to be honest, but I was so excited. I really just saw it as an adventure. And yes, I mean, I had all my friends and my base and, all your familiarities, but I completely remember being just really excited about it, and just thinking that this is going to be such an amazing time, and we kept in touch with our friends. Obviously we didn't have the same technology we have these days, but I wrote so many letters, so I definitely had like a lot of pen pals kind of with the friends back home, and that was nice to just kind of stay in touch. But yeah, I loved it. I thought it was, just such an exciting adventure.
Yeah, I think at any age, travel is at the same time a little scary and a little bit exciting. And especially as a youngster like that, it must have been, it's a new adventure. Mm-hmm. And I just think through travel, one always grows on some level, like even just if it's just your network or, but you gain so much more. So I think
Absolutely.
If people can have a travel in their life, like a big move,
definitely
pushes you out of your comfort zone so much, but it's so good,
Yeah, and I think it makes a difference if you make that move with your family unit. I think I didn't really care as long as we were all kind of together.
Yeah.
And so, I think you feel like as a 9-year-old, you feel really secure. And I completely trusted my parents in their decisions, and they've always just done what's best for us. And I think because of that, I was completely fine with it. If I was sent off to boarding school in a different country, I probably would have felt very different. But because we were all together, and yeah, it was really nice. And I think the conversation, Gareth, sorry, that they eventually did have with us wasn't hectic. They didn't say something like, guys, we're leaving because this, country might experience a few like difficulties. They just said, we've decided that it'll be the best move to go to the UK. And so, they did it very tactfully, which I also appreciate. But yeah.
That's cool. That's great. And what do they think about you now being in South Africa? Are they comfortable with it, or what do they give you?
Literally every time my mum sees me, she's like, "When are you moving back to England?" But I think that's just because she misses me, obviously. And I think initially it was quite strange for them because they were like, "We moved you guys, out of there. Now you're going back." But at the same time, I also think that they were, I think, quite comfortable with the fact that we went back to our roots, and we meaning my brother and I, and I think they liked that because I think it also shows that they brought us up in a way that we didn't really forget our roots, and that we very much stuck to the principles of our upbringing and those sorts of things. But yeah, my parents obviously get a little bit worried sometimes, especially with what's on the news a lot of the time. And I think, in that respect, as I'm sure you guys can understand, that it gets blown up quite a lot in the media. So it's not necessarily as bad. When you're living here, it's just, yeah, and especially being out in a different country, I think they sometimes feel a bit helpless, if there is something going on, which I think for any parent is quite difficult. But they're amazing and very supportive. And, I think in the decisions that I've made and the career choices that I've made, they've always been very supportive. So I think they know that, I'm having a great time, and yeah, it's just what's right for me at the moment.
And you're able to make your own decisions about your life, and you'll still always be that little girl, I suppose. So from that, totally understandable,
Yeah.
Just understanding a little bit, you osteopathy. Now, I would imagine that you must be a sort of a caring person at heart, and you must enjoy helping others, I would imagine. But tell us a little bit how you got into that sort of industry.
Yeah, so I think, I was really lucky, I think, in that from a very young age, I know roughly what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work in the healthcare profession or the medical field, and I knew I wanted to work with people. I think that definitely was maybe stemmed from my dad being a dentist. So I did a lot of work with him during school holidays and on Saturdays. And I actually wanted to do dentistry for a long time, until eventually I kind of realized that wasn't, exactly what I wanted. I really enjoy the interaction with people more and getting to know the actual roots of a problem. So I did lots of work experience within the medical field, and osteopathy just really fits with what I wanted, and what I was looking for as a career. So yeah, I just love what I do, and I'm very fortunate in having kind of been, led that way.
And I'm not sure if you know, but Craig is a chiropractor.
I know.
And I know there's always this competition between physios, chiropractors, osteos. So let's just keep it nice and
keep it civil here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I completely respect the chiros. So there's a chiro that works in my practice. So yeah.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
I think.
Yeah, it's often a
was.
misconception that people have, is that there's this massive weird like competition thing, but actually everyone has their little place, and yeah, that's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, where did your folks set up shop in the UK?
They are. We moved to Newbury, which is in Berkshire. So yeah, my dad worked there for a while, and then worked in Farnborough, and has a practice there. Yeah, so I went to school in the surrounding areas, and then for my A levels went to school in Reading. So yeah, very countryside, which was, yeah, it was just beautiful out there.
Yeah, I'm actually sure one of our previous guests, Dr. Alex, she's Australian, but she also went to school in the UK, and I'm sure it was Newbury as well, or some little town around there where she went to school. So I need
No
to go.
way.
I need to go and check up on the notes.
Yeah. I bet. I mean, there'll definitely be some like mutual friends or something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
It's a small place.
small place.
Yeah, exactly. So you had to obviously go and study in London. Did that mean you moved away from home, or were you commuting
Yeah.
most days?
No, no. I mean, I definitely was ready to move out of the house at 18. Love my parents, but I think it's just, most 18-year-olds have that craving of independence. So, yeah, I moved to London, which was nice because it was about an hour from Newbury, which, meant that we still went home for weekends and stuff, and holidays. Yeah, but I loved London, and actually really, I've always wanted to move back, but you're kind of like Cape Town, London, I'm not sure. Yeah, so yeah, and I loved living in London, and I think being a young professional there would probably be even nicer because you actually have money to spend, but you're not just a student. But yeah, it was a really nice place to actually just spend 4 years.
Oh, that's cool. And which part of London were you in?
London Bridge. So
Oh, cool.
my uni was in Borough, which is kind of south of the river.
Yeah. That's literally just down the road from me because I live in Greenwich, so I know exactly where you
No
are.
way!
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Isn't that where a
Okay,
lot of South Africans ended up?
No, actually not bad. Like it's in Wimbledon and like Putney and those sort of places where most South
yeah.
Africans are. I did spend a good 8 to 9 years there, so I've done my
Oh my
time.
gosh. Nice.
And Lizanne, there was a point, obviously, so your life's moving forward at a rapid pace, and everything. You bought a practice and things like that in Cape Town, and everything is kind of from the outside looking pretty solid and moving well. And tell us sort of a little bit about how you came to this decision to sort of be part of something much sort of, let's say, bigger than yourself, or like a really big cause, and decide to join the Coxless crew. Or obviously there's an evolution that happens there, but give us a little bit of a background leading into the scenario where you actually find yourself being chosen to be one of the ladies that actually rowed across the Pacific.
So I think I got to a point in my life where I was like, okay, either do something quite big, or I go back to the UK. So I actually I saw, I was quite triathlon crazy at the time, and I was following this triathlete called Chrissy Wellington. She's an Olympic triathlete, and she is actually an ambassador for our row. So she retweeted a post by Laura, who was the team lead, where they were recruiting for members for this row. So I read it and I just thought, wow, like this is amazing, but not to do. I get very inspired by women who are very proactive and who just kind of, just go out there and do things. So I sent Lauren a message and I said, I think what you're doing is amazing. Good luck. I'll follow you guys. I'll sponsor you, whatever. What you're doing is really incredible. So she messaged me back and she said, well, why don't you join? So I was like, you must be joking. I've never rode before in my life. And I live in Cape Town and they're all in the UK. And she replied and said, well, none of that matters. So obviously it was a bit of a shock. And again, it's a complete like mental barrier that you just eventually get over. And you're like, actually, this might actually be a really awesome thing to do. So, and then, so I applied. I eventually thought, I might as well just apply and just see, because it's still not certain that I'll actually get in. So I applied, and my idea at the time was do the row and then move back to England. Because that would be a really good kind of transition like stage where you kind of, say goodbye to Cape Town, do the row, and then go back to another country. But at that exact same time, I got the opportunity to buy a practice. That's kind of been a 10-year, old practice. And I just thought, okay, this is too big an opportunity to pass up as well. And, and then you're kind of stuck like, okay, I've got two like life-changing things have just come up. So I decided to buy the practice. And then I kind of had to say to Laura eventually that, I still would love to be part of the row in some way or another. But I just won't be able to do the whole row, because I think leaving a practice that you've just bought for 9 months or 6 to 9 months would be quite impossible. And she said, no, that's fine. We'll keep you as a reserve. And then I kind of obviously stayed in touch, and I followed their progress of, kind of training and getting the whole row ready. And then about 3 months before about a month, before they set off from San Francisco, Laura called me and she was like, can you still do it? And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, wow, like crazy. And then I didn't have very long to answer either. Just obviously there was some timing pressures. So I then just very quickly had to work out whether it was actually possible to, to kind of, sorry, my computer thing has just come up again. Let me just deal with this. And,
I think you can set like a time, can't you?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying, but it's only now saying restart in 2 hours. Will we be done in 2 hours?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. Now I can't remember what I was saying.
You were just filling out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so then, Laura. So then I basically had to work out really quickly whether I was going to be able to run the practice whilst taking about 4 months. Actually, at the time, it was about 3 months off. So obviously I had to work out kind of the finances and try and get someone to replace me and see my patients. And there's just a lot of logistical stuff to happen. But yeah, we kind of figured that out. And then I just said yes, and that was it. So then I really quickly had to, a lot had to happen in a very short space of time, as well as working kind of 12-hour days. So yeah, but I'm really glad that, it kind of happened that way, because I think if I'd been part of it right from the beginning, and kind of worked on the fundraising and, getting to the start line, I think having just bought the practice, it wouldn't have been possible for me to actually keep up that pace. But, a 3-4 months of really intense training and working and doing everything that needed to happen, it just worked out really perfectly.
So if we just backtrack a little bit, had you ever met her in person at all?
No, so I hadn't, but I think we'd Skype. Yeah, we had a Skype interview. So I met her over Skype. And then I got through to the kind of the physical test round. And as it would happen, I was due to go back to the UK in that June anyway. So I kind of just moved my flights to suit the dates, and we ended up going to the Brecon Beacons for a weekend. And that's where I met them all. Actually, in fact, I'd met Laura in, where did I meet her? I think in London before that. And yeah, we got on so well. She's incredible. And I think that definitely kind of, spurred me on to do it, because I think just surrounding yourself with these incredible women, and learning from, the kind of leadership styles that she had, and that was such a great, opportunity as well. So we had a weekend in Brecon Beacons where we basically were trained by a company called Fieri, and they do kind of army training with, the Sanders lot, and they do team building things. And our task was to do a 24-hour hike, where we basically go to checkpoints, and we took it in turns, and each person basically had to lead a particular section of the trek. But, by the time we got back, I think we started at 4:00 in the morning and then got back 4:00 the next morning. You're so exhausted. So the aim was obviously to see how people deal with exhaustion, and the particular leadership skills that they had, and the team working skills that they had. So it was intense, but it was definitely one of the most fun weekends that I've had in a while.
That's so cool.
And then that must just be, obviously, it's a massive physical feat, to do this. But obviously there's a massive, like you said, there's a massive mental component, and sort of this focus and this stamina that one needs to find mentally for something like this. I would imagine it must be a weird thing leading up to a race, I guess, to kind of imagine what it's going to be like and try and do your best to kind of, I think training is probably the easier part in my mind. I mean, I don't know, but because you can kind of just push harder, but you don't know how you're going to feel in that scenario. So how did you sort of get your head in the game beforehand?
So I think I was really lucky in that I joined the girls in Hawaii. So just to kind of give you an overview. So we rode across the whole Pacific Ocean, which was basically 8,446 miles. But we did it in 3 stages. We did San Francisco to Hawaii, Hawaii to Samoa, and Samoa to Cairns. And so the reason I joined was that one of the girls was unfortunately not able to do the whole row. So 4 of us in the boat. And, by the time that I was brought into the row, we had about a month before the girls set off from San Francisco. And then I had about 2-3 months to kind of read their blogs, and they called me on from the ocean as well. And I really got quite a deep insight into what life was going to be like before I got onto the boat. And obviously they could advise me on, kind of what to bring, and, just what it was going to be like. And so I was really lucky in that sense. But I think, to be honest, even with that, you just have no idea. And actually, I was okay with that. I didn't even go out, on the ocean here in Cape Town, because, I think ignorance is bliss for a reason. And, maybe if we all knew what we were letting ourselves in for, I don't think that we would have done it, because it was really tough at moments. But the fact that you're a little bit, unsure of how it's actually going to be, it makes you actually deal with the difficulties when they come. You just don't actually have a choice. But yeah, so I think training for something like this was, absolutely, we had to get physically fit, or like in an optimal physical state. But then for the psychological aspect, we had an amazing sports psychologist work with us, Keith Goddard, and he was like absolutely golden in preparing us for this row. And he'd been working with the girls, you know, right from the beginning. In fact, I also met him when we did the physical training in, you know, the physical test in the UK before the row, like when they were still choosing the team, because we did psychometric tests, we did, you know, went through a lot of questions. So they started that process right from the beginning, which is, I think, why our team was so successful in actually staying friends while we were on the boat. But yeah, he was really incredible during the training, because we had weekly Skypes, and towards the end, obviously, that became more regular. But yeah, he really prepped us very well. And then, of course, you know, gave us lots of tools to be able to cope with the difficulty. So we did a lot of mindfulness, a lot of visualization techniques, and just one of the things that I actually have brought into my kind of working life as well, like with my employees, is you know, the kind of the hot buttons of what brings out the best in you and what brings out the worst in you. And I find that really useful, because, you know, some people have different triggers for what kind of makes them angry or what makes them happy. And when you are sad, some people deal with it differently. Like, I'd like to just get a hug and be encouraged, whereas other people might just want to be left alone. So that was a really interesting exercise. And actually, by the time that I got onto the boat, I think I knew the girls already. You know, I already knew exactly, you know, what their triggers were for certain things. So yeah, that was good.
Yeah, wow. So, I mean, seriously, I can't wait to get into this in a bit more detail, because like what you did is absolutely no mean feat. You know what I mean? It's like crazy, because I watched the full documentary last night, and I was like seriously amazed. Just a couple of things, because like so far you kind of like you almost make it sound easy, you know what I mean? But I can't imagine the selection process was sort of as easy as it sounds to me right now. And there must have been like one or two other people going for the selection as well. So yeah, so just a couple of things, maybe one can lead into the other. Did you always have like such a strong mindset as a youngster? And what was the selection process like in terms of, you know, like there must have been more people, and there was probably more than just one step at, like, say, you know, that weekend away that you went?
So I think mindset wise, I think you don't really notice it when you're younger, right? You just kind of think that everyone's the same. But looking back, and of course, you're doing a lot of kind of self-analysis over and after the row. I realized that my parents, and I think my mum in particular, they always just encouraged me. Well, my dad as well. I mean, they've just always been so supportive and encouraging, and my parents brought me up in a way that I've always thought that I can do anything. You know, if someone said, I'm going to go do this, I'll be like, oh, I'll join you, or, you know, whatever. Like, I don't think there was ever really any fear in my childhood or in my life, which, you know, looking back, I think I'm incredibly fortunate to have had that. Because I think it takes a lot of people some time to get to that place where they realize that actually, you know, they need to get out of their comfort zone. And I think I've just always been really comfortable with being outside of my comfort zone. It's not really been anything new for me. You know, so with the row, I also just, you know, obviously initially I was like, this is crazy. And I think I was a bit worried about the safety aspect of it. But, you know, having spoken to Laura, she's just incredibly organized. So, you know, she's basically been organizing this row for about 3.5 years before we actually even set off from on the ocean, which meant that, you know, she had all her ducks in the row and everything, you know, all the everything was sorted. So I felt very secure as well in how we would deal with the difficulties out on the ocean. And then the selection process, yeah, I mean, we basically had to answer a questionnaire initially. So send in some answers by email and send in a video. And I basically just went up on up on Signal Hill with Table Mountain in the background. And I just took this really cheesy video, you know, saying like, I'd love to join the row with you guys. You know, these are my reasons. I can't even remember what my reasons were. I talked about the charities for a little bit, because, you know, I think that was going to be a big drive for us. And, you know, to do anything like this, I think your willpower alone won't get you there. There's got to be like your whys. There was the Ironman Cowboy. Have you guys heard of him? He basically did 50 Ironmen in 50 days in 50 states. Incredible. But I saw a talk by him, and he said it so nicely that he said you've got to have this like little accumulation of whys. So you know, if you're like in your really like darkest moments, you've got to pull from those whys, like, why am I doing this? And, you know, it could be something like, you know, I want to raise money for breast cancer care and walking with the wounded. I want to do this to prove people that, you know, I can do this. I want to prove it to myself. I want to make my family proud. I want to, you know, like, I'm doing it for the team. You've got to kind of have reasons why you're doing that. And so, yeah, I mean, I kind of tried to draw on that from in the video. Sorry, that was a little bit of roundabout way to explain that. And then, yeah, we basically, after that, I guess you went through to the second round. The second round was a Skype interview, but actually in the UK, they had a day in London, I think it was, where you kind of meet and greet everyone and kind of just get to know them. And they did a few team orientated exercises. And then after that was a physical test. So, you know, I think for Laura, she obviously knew what she was looking for in certain people. And it honestly wasn't just the sporty, like, strong women. It was actually more to do with your mental, their mindsets. So I think for her, and having had Keith, the sports psychologist, to help her through that as well, they were able to kind of just draw on the people that they thought would be a good fit. But yeah, I mean, I think you've just got to be yourself, actually, in those sort of situations. And yeah, I'm very glad that they picked me.
We'd love to hear that, because I think we often discuss this, Gareth and I, you know, just being more of yourself allows people to then know exactly where they're at, and either you will gel or you won't, but at least you're just totally there, you know, and people totally understand.
Absolutely.
But yeah. I think, you know, just hearing you talk about leadership, and Laura just sounds like an incredible woman.
She is.
How important is it to be a good leader, and what made a good leader, or what makes a good leader, and what made her a good leader, in your opinion?
I think what makes a good leader, you obviously get lots of different leadership styles. I think what I really loved and appreciated about her and the other girls, to be honest, you know, I think being a group of ultimately 6 girls, who are all obviously very strong, like strong personalities and strong females, everyone was a leader in their own kind of capacity. And Laura ultimately, you know, recognized that and wanted that to be the way that we actually approached our row, is that everyone was kind of in charge of something. So that it wasn't just her leading everyone. It was a team that functioned kind of, you know, everyone functioned in their own capacity as well. But Laura's leadership style was, it was, first of all, obviously female. Like I think it's difficult in today's kind of, well, not in today, sorry, it's just difficult generally to find a good female leader who, I mean, we have a lot of them obviously out there, but you know, in my own personal life, to have a good female leader who is kind and passionate and caring and, you know, not hard and cold, which I think we're taught that, you know, sort of represents strength in a way. But Laura, I think watching her, she cared for her team. I think ultimately that made her an incredible leader because she really put the team first, and she lived it. You know, she really it was one of the values on the boat, and she really embodied that. And as a result, we all embodied it. And she really led by example. So I think you know, that's really two qualities in a leader that I think anyone would be really happy to have.
Yeah. I must say, watching the show, you literally took the words out of my mouth. I thought she was such a kind lady, and it was just such a great way to lead people, you know, like very inclusive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And just encouraging, you know what I mean? Like dealing with a leader that is positive, is and smiley and grateful for everyone else in the team is so much better than having someone who's like, you know, like Hitler and like wants everything done their way and there's no flexibility.
Absolutely.
It's so much better.
It's I mean, it's the way forward, really. You know, I think because ultimately you inspire a team to be better, and that's, I think, what she did really well. Is that, I mean, we all just got on so well, and it was it trickled down from Laura, I think, ultimately. And you know, what you said about her being very inclusive is all the girls were as well. But I mean, one of my fears before I got onto the boat was just the whole team dynamic thing, because they'd obviously already rowed essentially an ocean together, and now I was going to step on as a newbie and wasn't really sure if I was going to kind of feel part of the team. And you know, they'd obviously have their little, you know, their routines and the things that they've already done, but they were very conscious of that as well. So right from the get-go, we had like a team day where we just include Lizanne into the whole team, and then, you know, just kind of spending time together and teaching me the ways of Doris, and you know, they were just amazing. So yeah, I think making your team feel like they are valued was really, really important.
That's great.
Yeah, that's for sure. So sorry, Greg. So I'm glad you took the conversation that way. I was gonna ask, like, say the couple of weeks or month before you're gonna go out there. I'm sure Laura's obviously like chatting to you, probably just like on a one-to-one basis. But how does your routine change, if at all? Because I know you're obviously running your practice. You're having to train as well. What about your sleeping patterns? For me, this is like such a big part of it that I would like to go more into. But like, before you get there, are you practicing sleeping less?
You know, we did discuss this, but there is absolutely no point in starting the row tired. You know, there's just isn't any way that you could prepare yourself for it, like on a sleeping level. So yeah, we basically, our routine was 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 2 rowing, 2 resting. So it meant that we really only got to sleep about 90 minutes, which was enough for one whole sort of full sleep cycle. But it was all right, because, you know, by the time you go out there, you know, like at 4 o'clock in the morning, you know that in 2 hours you're going to have a nap again. So that kind of was enough to keep you going for the 2 hours, like on the row. But no, it it was grueling. So the moments that it was horrible was where you got in, let's say at 2 o'clock in the morning, finished rowing a night shift where you got absolutely drenched. It was either raining or really windy, so you got like splashed, like soaking with salt water. You fall asleep. Obviously you go in and you dry yourself off and whatever, but you fall asleep as quickly as you can. And then you go out again at 4 o'clock in the morning, and it is still raining and it's still wet, and you're having to put your soggy, like rowing clothes on again. That sogginess is kind of what gets you, because you're like, it was just, that's the horrible times. But then you also had the amazing times where you'd wake up at, I don't know, 5 o'clock, you'd start rowing, and that would be kind of your morning shift, the dawn shift. And it was a tricky one, because that's usually the one where we really struggled to stay awake. But you just see this amazing sunrise, and, you know, then especially when the ocean is completely flat and it looks like a mirror, it's so magical that you just, you know, actually can't wait to get out on the oars, to just kind of, you know, have that time to think and to reflect. And so, yeah, there were goods and there were bads.
I'd love to get more into that in a second about, you know, some of the experiences. But just before we get there, it fascinates me. Take us to the moment, okay, this is it, like last day in practice, like tomorrow I'm leaving. And then, yeah, just talk us through how that works. So you flew over and landed. How did it feel to be like, okay, I'm actually getting in the boat now? And that first sort of row, that first session must have been kind of surreal. Like, I'm actually, this is, it must be crazy.
That is such a good question, because that was an insane moment, which I'll get into in a minute. But the building up to it, it was frantic. You know, for 4 months, leading up to my departure, I'd go to work at 7, finish, let's say, at 6, go for like a 2-3 hour gym session. I'd eat as much as I could. I would kind of, you know, get all the logistics in place. So I think I was ready, you know, like by the time I got there, I was just like, thank goodness, like I'm actually like finally going. So that last day at work was insanely stressful, because obviously there's always a million things to do. And the handovers that needed to happen, and especially with payments that had to happen whilst I was away, and making sure that everyone was, you know, knew what to do. But then I flew with our logistics manager, Tony, and he was, oh my gosh, he was amazing. And that was great, because he's been supporting ocean rowers, you know, for years, and he knew everything inside out. So he was at the airport, he sat me down and showed me the currents that we were going to have to go through, and the wind like cycles and patterns. So that was really good. I think it was great to kind of prepare you mentally for, you know, what we were about to face. And then obviously in Hawaii, the girls arrived. That was really exciting. And then we had a week of, gosh, it was also frantic. We basically had to clean the boat, and we had to buy all our sort of snack packs and put them together. We had to stock our food. We had to fix anything that was broken. There was lots of media to be done, and, you know, obviously sending off like last minute emails and stuff. So that week was really crazy. And then that day when we left I remember it so clearly, and it's definitely one of the like most clear memories that I have from the row, was we set off from Hawaii Yacht Club. And obviously I'd spent quite intense time with the girls, but I literally just remember waving to the crowds that were there to, you know, see us off, and everyone was so excited. And I just remember like waving with this fake smile and just thinking like, what am I doing? I was like, it's too late. I can't go back. Like, this is really happening. I can't believe that I am actually doing this. So there was absolutely a moment of horror where I was like, I felt like I was being kidnapped by these girls, obviously at my own will. Like, but I just, yeah, it was the most bizarre feeling. And then, I wasn't rowing the first shift. So obviously they were kind of showing me the ropes and everything. And I had some food. I think I had a little nap, and then I came out and it was my time to row. And that was just insane. But honestly, the seasickness started right from the first day. So I actually just kind of, I think when you get into that headspace, you're just kind of on autopilot. So I don't remember that much from, after that moment for the first couple of days. But another really clear memory was the first night. So obviously we did a couple of shifts and then had a little sleep and then came out and it was dark. So our first night shift was another like really good memory. And it was full moon, I think. So I was completely like in awe of how much light the moon produced and how it just looked like someone had switched on a light over the Pacific. So that was really good. But obviously, the documentary is called Losing Sight of Shore. And that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't see shore anymore. Like, this is pretty scary. There was like an enormous feeling.
Yeah, yes, I swear. I literally have goosebumps when you talk about like the moon and the flat water and the sunrises. I can only imagine just like how beautiful and peaceful those like scenes must have been. It must have been idyllic. So just a couple of things. You had to put on like 12 kgs or something like that before the race. And let's be honest, you're not exactly a big girl. Like you're pretty skinny. So to put on 12 kgs must have been pretty tough. And then one thing that you also don't get to see like in the documentary at all, and I would have thought like they would have, like in those breaks, those 5 days that they're on land, between the different legs, like the girls must have just wanted to sleep and, like spend all day in these comfortable beds and stuff. But by the sounds of it, they didn't have much time to do that at all.
No, not at all. In fact, I think, getting back on the ocean was actually like a bit of a break, because time on the land was honestly like you try and do everything as quickly as you can. And it was so intense that we all got onto the boat in Hawaii like being pretty tired because we didn't sleep very much. And there's just so much that needs to happen, and like interviews, obviously time zone differences as well. So that was. It doesn't really go into it very much in the documentary, but we didn't we slept kind of 5-6 hours at nighttime and then like got up early and just the day it started again. I would have loved a pajama day on land, but that really didn't happen. And then before the row, so part of the training was putting on some weight, so ideally about 10 to 12 kilos, and that was really to have fat reserves for, obviously we were going to lose weight, and then you're also a little bit more susceptible to picking up illnesses when you're really underweight. So I didn't have that much time, but I picked up about 8 kilos, which I was pretty proud of. And it was honestly, it was the most fun because as a girl, obviously you're always like, oh, I don't know, or like, you go for a run just to kind of, I'm really not that, I don't calorie count at all. And I'm not, I love my food. But I think it's absolutely guilt-free. Like you're able to eat without thinking, oh, like I shouldn't have this. it's just, you're like, I'm going to have this because I have to. It was amazing. So, and then we obviously did that with fat as well as muscle. So I had to bulk up a little bit. So spent a lot of time in the weight section of the gym, which was another first for me. I always just do the cardio stuff. So yeah, standing around the guys, you know, like pumping, was quite fun. But yeah, it was, I mean, I don't think I looked that different. I think, you know, there's ways of putting on muscle, and fat. Like, I don't think I looked enormous when I got onto the boat, but I think I was definitely more prepared. Let's say.
Yeah. So were you hitting the Greenpoint Virgin Active, all the boykies? Boykies. Oh, classic.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. I just didn't have my baby lotion to put on all my guns.
Yeah, so it's a classic gym that, I swear, I reckon.
Yeah. It's a goodie.
Just thinking about, I've had seasickness once, and it was terrible. Like, one of the worst things ever. You just feel so horrible. It's like, I don't know, it's just terrible. And we had a brief discussion just about it earlier, and I thought it would go away. I thought, like, oh, you know, 1 day or 2 days maybe you feel horrible, and then you're like, oh, sweet, I'm ready to rock and roll. But for you, it didn't really go away. How do you mentally sort of deal with that?
Well, so I also thought it would go away. I knew I get seasick. So, I mean, I get car sick. So I was like, okay, it's definitely something I'm going to have to deal with. So I was like, okay, it's going to be a tough 3 days, and then I'll probably get over it. But it just never really did. It's really the most bizarre thing, because, I mean, we were out there eventually for 97 days, and your body doesn't get used to something like that. It's insane. So, and I mean, I don't know if it was just me, like if it was maybe, I've obviously like thought about this a lot, like maybe it's just me and I should change my mindset, and, you know, maybe I'm bringing on my seasickness by actually thinking about it. But honestly, I tried everything. I obviously had a lot of time to think about it. So I really sort of tried a lot of things that our sports psychologist helped with as well. But what you do get used to eventually is that feeling. So, you know, it doesn't happen all the time. I definitely had some form of seasickness, like, you know, every day, but it wasn't that intense all the time. But when the seas were really rough, that's obviously when it came on. When the sea was really flat, it was amazing. You're just kind of cruising at the same level. So that it helped when the weather was nicer. But whenever the wind picked up and the waves were a bit bigger, you then kind of just prepare yourself for it as well. And the girls were amazing because we had to do our logbook after every shift. So, you know, they'd go into the cabin, do the logbook, so that, because if I start reading stuff as well, it just kind of throws me over the edge. And so then I do something different, like preparing the food that's actually, you know, kind of keeps you busy. So they helped a lot, and they were super supportive, and, you know, like, it must have been so annoying for them, but they were really, really patient with me. And then eventually, you know, you get so used to it that Nat was, like, one of the times I was on shift with Nat, and she was just chatting away, like talking, telling me the story, and it was a really funny story, and I'd basically like be laughing and like throw up over the side and like carry on. And I'm like, Nat, can you just stop talking for a second? And then she'd be like, oh, sorry, and then carry on again. But then, you know, so it became such a like normal thing. So yeah, I mean, that's what you get used to, and it just kind of becomes your norm. And I think as soon as you get your head around that, it's okay.
Yes, I literally don't know how you would deal with that. Like, I mean, you have an amazingly strong personality and mindset just to kind of deal with that hour in, hour out. You know what I mean? I can, because it doesn't stop. Like, you want to go sleep for a couple of hours, the boat's still rocking, so it's not like you go to sleep and forget about it. I can imagine.
I have the most amazing strategy though, which really helped me. So I can't remember when I discovered it, but I get into the brace position. I call it the brace position, where you're basically in the fetal position, but on your front. And it took my seasickness away. So I was, by the time I woke up, I was good to go again. So yeah.
Wow. So you would sleep like that sometimes?
Yeah. And as soon as I get into the brace position, the girls would be like, "Oh, shame, Lizanne, are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'll be fine in a minute." And then, by the next shift, you're fine.
That's amazing, eh? Because you actually see that a lot in the documentary with on your like little pillow and stuff. And like you said, eh? Like, let's be honest. When this happens day in, day out, if it's easy, I guess, to kind of get irritated with people in a way. And the girls, like you said, like just amazing. You know what I mean? Like they're like, "Oh, cool. This is what happens. We're all out here. It's part of the journey. Let's just get on with it." And it's just like, once again, it's that kindness element which just makes things work. Hey.
Yeah, and I think for us it's such a normal. Like we don't even think about it, but when people actually ask us about it, I think it's pretty amazing. But no one ever missed a shift. So this was 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 24 hours a day for, in my leg, it was the longest leg. That was 97 days. No one ever missed a shift and no one was ever late. I mean, I think the latest that we were was maybe like 30 seconds, but no one you didn't ask anyone to just, can you just, sub in for me, or guys, I can't do this anymore. I'm taking this one out for the day, or, I need a day to rest. That didn't happen. So we knew we had to work together. And I think the only way that you can really do that is if you all work together, which we did.
That just shows you, hey, like you just think about people taking a sickie or taking a sick day, or even if they feel like they're a little bit sick sometimes, and you think like half those times you probably would have been fine, like just mentally, just you going, I don't really feel like this, and there's a real example. If you could do that and not miss a shift, and you were feeling like as bad as you probably could feel, then you can just, it just all shows you once again where it just depends on where your head's at and the why as well.
Absolutely, so
cool. But I can just imagine, I find this really fascinating. Like, what do you think? Like, first of all, you speak about music, having a good playlist. We all love music, so I would love to hear some of the stuff that was on the playlist. But before we get there, like, where does your mind go? Do you have moments where you're not chatting and you're just kind of thinking about stuff, or do you feel really bored at times, or are you kind of thinking about the next sort of stroke? Or what does your mind go through during those times on the walk?
So in the beginning, there was a lot of chatting because obviously we had a lot to catch up on. So we literally, we covered we turned our lives inside out and we uncovered everything in it. So, we swapped partners every 5 days. Which was really important because it didn't become two teams rowing against each other. We basically incorporated, everyone built relationships throughout the row. So, for 5 days, you'd have this particular person. And in the beginning, you would tell life stories. You'd go through childhood friends, the schools, your lives and your dreams, boy, history, relationship stuff. And so that in the beginning it was all lots of talking, and you would repeat this 3 times because you basically rowed with obviously 3 different people. And then after a while, the conversation definitely got really interesting. So, not more interesting than life stories, but just it changed. In that I think you just end up talking about anything. And I think a lot of the time, especially for Laura and myself, a lot of the time we actually talked about food. So we would literally go through menus, and this was kind of towards the end when we were running out of food. And, you know, we'd basically start a morning shift and we'd be like, okay, like, what are we having for breakfast? And then we'd go through like, oh my gosh, my favorite thing is, you know, it's like eggs Benedict that I have at this place and they do this. And we would go into extreme detail about everything. Wow. So that was an example. And then other times, I mean, we basically decided before every shift what we were going to do. So, you know, we'd be like, oh, do you want to talk this shift, or should we listen to some music? And you're like, oh, maybe let's listen to some music, or I'm going to listen to my audiobook. Do you have something to listen to? You know, so we tried to kind of obviously marry them up quite nicely. So if someone was listening to an audiobook, you'd kind of listen to it like kind of together. And then, but we eventually got into quite a routine, because so the times that you definitely shouldn't not talk is the night shifts, because you end up drifting off. So we ended up talking over the night shifts quite a lot. And an amazing thing that Izzy, and again, this isn't in the documentary, but it's so incredible. Izzy, who was on the first leg, found that she has the ability to recite pretty much word for word, like so many films. So she would tell like the films, as in the story of, you know, Les Mis, Sound of Music, Cool Runnings, The Notebook, like everything. So it was basically like a storytelling time. And we adopted this obviously when I got onto the boat as well. And I think I'm really bad with films. If you ask me if I've seen a particular film, I'm like, I don't think so. It sounds familiar, but I'm not sure. And then I'll start watching something and I'm like, oh no, I have seen this one. But so the only ones that I actually could recite was Aladdin and The Lion King. So that was in my repertoire. But yeah, so I mean, I think you also got into kind of a rhythm with the different girls. So, you know, Natalia, for example, she's really chatty, and there's basically a lot of talk going on. With Emma, for example, there was a lot of reflective time. So we spent a lot of time kind of listening to music, and which I really valued as well, because I think, you know, you're out there for such a long time. You kind of need that time to think and to analyze, and yeah. So it was a mix, and we I think we covered. I don't think there's anything that we didn't cover in our conversations.
I can imagine.
Yeah, that's amazing. Eh? Like the thing that kind of stands out for me there as like such a key lesson is communication, and you know that's what was
absolutely
probably one of the core things which made it work so well. You know, like speaking to each other like during shifts, but then at the same time letting each other know before a shift, cool, let's listen to an audiobook, or let's listen to music, whatever. That's also really key, because then there's no kind of like you know, I want to do this, I want to do that, and then awkwardness and you fight or whatever. So that's really great.
Definitely. Yeah, no, we were incredibly open, and we had this thing about the pebble in your shoe. So, you know, if there's an issue, there's like a tiny little pebble, don't leave it, because it's eventually going to cause a blister. You know, just get it out in the open, just talk about it. And that's basically what we did. And I think it stopped, you know, all of the arguments that were possibly going to happen. And yeah, I mean, I guess generally by nature someone who's kind of who's just always fine, like even though I'm not. And I think, yeah, on the boat you can't do that. And I realized that, and it was just so refreshing to just speak your mind, and to also feel so comfortable with someone and with a group of people where you can just kind of completely be who you are and not feel like you need to hide anything. So yeah, communication was absolutely key.
Yeah.
Discussing communication, so you finish a shift and you're like, oh, this is good, let's get into some dry, or get a bit dry, whatever it is, and lie down. Do you like start scrolling Facebook? Did you have that?
Oh my gosh, that would have added a completely different angle on our row. But no, we had a satellite phone, which we used. We were able to make a 10-minute phone call every week. And then we had a satellite email system. But apart from that, we didn't have Wi-Fi on the boat. So you basically get into the cabin and you just pass out. I think you basically fall asleep even before your head hits the pillow. And yeah, we had 2 awake shifts during the day. So during the middle of the day, so you'd obviously finish your morning shift and then you'd have an awake shift, an row shift and an awake shift. And then the rest of the resting sessions were all sleeping sessions. So in those awake sessions, which is basically 4 hours every day, you do what needs to happen. So you wash your clothes, you make your food, you write your blog, or you do a bit of reading, you write your emails or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of what happened, when we go back into the cabins.
So if I'm just trying to work that out, like how many hours do you end up sleeping a day then? Is it what, about 6 or so, or do you get more than
Yeah, I think so I think there's 8. No, wait, hang on. I should work this out as well. Maybe you guys can pause this while I in the actual recording while I actually work it out. I mean,
This is
in
the stuff
reality,
people like to see, so we're going to show them all these parts.
I think in reality we ended up, to be honest, sleeping about 5-6 hours, because you never just, your 2 hours of resting, you don't immediately start sleeping. So I think, yeah, generally about 5-6 hours. And then if you were really good, on those times where we were just exhausted, I think about 6-7 hours.
Okay. So sorry, I've got 2 questions here, and you're welcome to choose not to ask one of them because it's graphic. But
Okay.
but there's no, I mean, for me, it's just fascinating, and I'm sure millions of people too. First one though is how did you decide on this sort of 2-hour shift pattern? Is there some science behind it? I mean, I'm assuming there must be. And then in your awake shifts, and maybe other shifts as well, I'm sure like you have to go to the bathroom, okay? And if you need a number 2 on that boat, it's not exactly easy. I'm kind of thinking, I didn't see like a toilet on there. And what is it? Do you like jump into the water and do like a floater? Or I'm just throwing it up. I don't know. Do they like? Like that?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe it would scare them off. Hey, but I think no, it's a completely valid question, and we get it all the time, because I think that's one of the things. Immediately when you say to someone, "I'm doing this" or "I've done this," you think about how you relate yourself, like you try and put yourself in that situation. So you always obviously ask about food, like what did you eat, because you have to eat. And then naturally, then obviously sleeping, like where did you sleep? And then naturally, what about the bathroom? So it was a bucket and jacket. Wow. We had a lovely red bucket on board, and it worked like a charm. And to be honest, obviously it sounds a little bit like weird now, like you're like, oh, how would I ever go to a bathroom in a bucket? But that's how we did it on the boat, and that's how everyone did it. And that's kind of, again, it became standard. And because no one was weird about it, it just made everyone come, you know what I mean? And yeah. I mean, being girls as well, and I guess guys would do this as well, but conversations even lead there sometimes. So you completely talk about everything, and there's not a corner of your life that you hide, and you're completely okay with that as well, because there's no judgment, there's no weirdness about it, which is honestly one of the most refreshing things ever, just to kind of be without having to worry about anything. And then your first question about a 2-hour cycle. Yes, I mean, it's generally what people do on ocean rowing. And I think the reason is about the sleep cycle. So you have to complete at least one sleep cycle when you're sleeping. And that is 90 minutes. And then the other thing we did talk about changing it halfway through to maybe 3 hours so that you could sleep longer. But to be honest, I think the idea of rowing for 3 hours is just, it's a bit tricky. So I think, it's long enough to sleep and long enough to row without kind of getting completely bored.
Yeah, that's classic.
But discussing a bit of the science, I mean, that's really interesting about sleep. I think it blows most people's minds to think that you can do that for so long, and also probably shifts your whole perspective on sleep in some way.
Absolutely.
Like nowadays in your life as well. Or if you're feeling tired and you've got a project to take care of, you're like, well, I'm pretty sure I can handle this.
Yeah.
But you also, you actually got to chat to a really interesting person, Professor Tim Noakes, about obviously leading up to it. And my sister actually gave me his book, The Real Meal Revolution.
Nice.
And what did he sort of have to say? I know it's taking it back to the food, but was it interesting meeting him just briefly? Like, is he an interesting guy? And
yeah, he was really interesting, and I think he'd been briefed about who I was and what I was wanting to see him about. So the reason, I mean, just for a bit of background, the reason I wanted to speak to him is he was the author of The Real Meal Revolution, where he talks about a diet consisting of high fat, high protein, and no carbs. And I guess I wanted to, obviously, when I had to put on my weight, I wanted to do it in a sensible way, and obviously try and do it as quickly as possible, but also not, have kind of long-term negative effects on my health. And yeah, speaking to him was so interesting. And so he'd been briefed about who I was and what I was doing. And I think, I walked into his office, basically just coming from work. So I was kind of dressed up in my work stuff, and I think I looked a little bit dolled up. So I think he literally just looked at me and was like, "You want to row across an ocean?" So I think he was completely perplexed, and he was like, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" But then, yeah, we obviously got into a really interesting conversation about the different kinds of foods that that would be really beneficial. If I had longer, and I think maybe if I'd been part of the row a little bit longer, I would have tried to maybe implement some of the dietary recommendations that he suggested. Just because diet obviously was really tricky on the boat because we had dehydrated food packs. But if we could have incorporated more kind of oily fish and, that kind of stuff, I think it would have been really good. But he'd actually consulted with, I think it was Peter Van Ketz and his wife or girlfriend at the time, who also rowed a part of the Pacific at a point. And interestingly enough, he said that they did it on the diet that he recommended, and their weight didn't change. They went onto the boat, came off the boat, same weight, that's pretty incredible, to be honest.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, but he's such an inspirational person. I think, speaking to him, it's, he's a very knowledgeable guy. And so, yeah, I'm so glad that I was able to meet him.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's classic. I remember listening to Professor Noakes on 702 radio as a kid growing up, and my mom would always listen to it, and I'd listen to him, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's pretty cool." And so,
yeah, it's good.
So just I remember reading a blog article of yours about the food, and when it was time that you were running out towards the end of the trip, you actually literally I don't know if you had to ration or what the story was for the last kind of week or couple of weeks, but you made a song, American Pie, because your favorite food, your favorite food was the shepherd's pie, wasn't it? And that one always used to run out first. So what was the song exactly? Like, I know it was the tune of American Pie, but sort of made your own words, didn't you?
Yeah, we did, and I'll remember it in a minute. But yeah, so we were supposed to be and planned to be on the second leg for 60 days, and it ended up being 97. So I mean, that's quite drastic. I think we gave ourselves like an extra week of food, so it's obviously super drastic. And we actually didn't even know how long we were going to be on the boats, and we couldn't stop eating because that means no life. So we basically had to just be sensible with food. So we still had our meals, and we were basically rationing. But the shepherd's pie was like one of those real comfort foods on the boat, and it was hot. It wasn't very pleasant to eat it during the day because the days got ridiculously hot, and the shepherd's pie was always like a nice warm hearty meal. So it was usually an evening meal, or when it was really stormy. So yeah, the shepherd's pie song, I remember. So Nat and I wrote it, and it went something like, bye bye shepherd's pie, and we'd sing it all the time. It was really good.
It's such a great song. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it was really good.
So like, just talking about some of the moments while you were rowing, it must have been like both sides of the sort of scale, you know what I mean? Like, you must have had these epic moments, like you were explaining earlier on, like waking up, amazing sunsets, checking some of those whales. I just remember seeing some whales like on the documentary, which was insane, and other fish like jumping into the water with them. But then also, it must have been petrifying, like the size of the waves when in the storms. Like, can you just give us like a few of those stories on both sides?
So the good stories, oh my gosh, honestly, I think, anyone that's able to witness sights and the world from that sort of perspective is so lucky. Because first of all, I was completely taken aback by having 360-degree view of flat. I've never experienced that, where you don't have a building or a mountain or something that obstructs part of your view. So I think it's such a bizarre feeling. And, getting up in the morning when it's like a beautiful day and seeing this golden ocean that it literally looks like molten gold because it's just so flat, and the sun's coming up and it's just beautiful. Those are the moments, and Natalia in particular was very good in keeping us in the moment. She'd always, kind of bring us back and, say, guys, look at where we are, and, look at what amazing sights this is. So that the sunrises and the sunsets were incredible. And then the wildlife was by far, I think, one of the highlights for all of us. We had a whale circle us for about an hour and a half. And it was just so calm and gentle, and I think was just a bit curious as to who we were and what we were doing out here. And I don't think this whale had ever really seen people before, because we were honestly like hundreds and hundreds of miles out from the nearest anything. And then one of our favorite nights, and actually Natalia's in Cape Town at the moment, so I went kayaking with her, and what we spoke about when one night that we basically heard this pod of whales really close to us, but we couldn't see it because it was pitch black and then the moon hadn't risen yet. But it was one of those really quiet evenings where you don't hear anything, and you never not you never just don't hear anything, you know, kind of on land. So that's pretty special. And then I think we were about to switch shifts. So we put our oars down and we're kind of like unbuckling ourselves, and suddenly we just hear this like poof, 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 poof. And then we're like, what is that? And so we like, everyone just like stopped. And then you basically could hear this pod of whales that were maybe like 10-20 meters from us, and you just heard them like come up with their blowholes and, you know, kind of go under again and then come up again. And we sat for about 20 minutes just listening to this pod of whales just kind of going past us. But it was so amazing because your senses were so heightened because you couldn't see them. And obviously it's like a bit nerve-wracking because you're not sure, like, are they going to come close? Like, what's happening? But yeah, that was one of my favorite moments. And then the other one is actually swimming in that ocean. So basically stopping on a really nice day when the water is quite calm and just jumping out into that ocean, and you're surrounded by literally 65 million square miles of water.
Wow.
It's the most insane feeling. And, you know, it goes down to it's 2 miles deep, so you're kind of like, what is down there, like what is underneath my feet? It's so insane. And we weren't able to do this so often because of weather conditions, and obviously we needed to progress, but that was one of my highlights. And then the bad stuff, do you know what, I know it sounds strange, but I never had like a fearful moment. We had waves that were about like a 2-story building. But that was generally, during the day, that was quite fun because you'd ride the waves and you'd kind of just go up and down. You're like, wee, and go down the waves. And then you're like, 1 minute you're at the bottom of the ocean, and then next you're like right at the top and you can see like miles ahead. And then at nighttime, the only really scary moments that I had were when, not with those big waves, because it was more swell. It wasn't really waves that broke, but these like kind of smaller waves that were kind of bashing the boat around a little bit. And every now and then you'd get drenched with a wave. So we did, during those nights when it was, when the waves were really bad, and then the moon either wasn't out or it was behind clouds, so it was really dark and you couldn't see these waves coming towards you. Excuse me. And then sometimes it would actually hit you off your seat, and I mean that is a moment where you're like, oh my gosh, like, and then like you get up as quickly as possible, and then you just sit there for a moment being like, I could have just been washed over the side of this boat, like at nighttime, which is really your worst nightmare. So luckily that never happened, and we were strapped to the boat at all times. But yeah, that was the only really fearful moments. I remember one night when it was raining so hard that we had our rain jackets on, and it just feels like pressure on you, you know, like just the rain is literally just pressing down on you with these massive droplets. And it was thunder as well. So over the equator, which is where we were, there was a lot of thunder activity, and so there's like lightning going on. And I just remember like rowing and thinking, this is ridiculous, like what on earth are we doing? And I then just thought, like, why am I not scared? Like, it's the weirdest thing. I just wasn't scared, and I think none of us really were. You just feel so secure on that boat and with your team, and so yeah, it was pretty ridiculous, but luckily we weren't, you know, like petrified.
That's such an amazing range of human experience that obviously very, very, very few people get to truly experience something like that. So I guess that stuff you'll take with you forever, and the awesome stories, you know. But I guess you also anthropomorphized, or you kind of, Doris became like your home, your protector. I guess, you know, absolutely. Like it must have felt quite interesting, the relationship with Doris.
Yeah, she was a complete member of the team, actually. She was really, um, I mean, she was our everything, and you get to know her so well, and like the way that she moves through the waves, um and she was just so strong. Like there were waves like bashing against the walls, and you just didn't feel scared at all because she was essentially like a little cork that just bobbed on the ocean. So you get to know like how she moves, and luckily we never capsized, and that was, I guess, another fear for all of us, and we just didn't, because she literally has to be side onto a wave at 90 degrees before she actually capsizes. So yeah, we were very lucky, but I think, part of us kind of feeling so secure and not scared during the row was just knowing how well she was built and how much she could take.
Yeah, that's honestly, like, it's incredible. I mean, I, I can't even like begin to think what it must have been like. It must have just been so insane and so awesome. So I know, look, it's late in South Africa, and we've been speaking to you for a while now. So kind of before we like finish off, and now I reckon we could speak to you for hours, like at least at the end of this sort of thing. So we're probably going to have you on again at a later stage to properly finish the story off and go into other questions. How has the trip helped you, like, in terms of mindset, since you've been off the boat, like, in business, in relationships, etc.?
I think, yeah, for me, like in my mind, there's definitely kind of a like life before the row and life after the row. Not that my life didn't change that much. It was just really kind of, like you say, my mindset that changed. First of all, I realized that any relationship, you're a team. So, in a friendship, in a working relationship, in a kind of loving relationship, you're basically teammates, and how can you make that work better? And obviously part of that is to get to know each other really well, and get to know what, like I said earlier, like what are the things that kind of brings out the worst in them, and what are the things that actually brings out the best in them. For me, that was really quite important, and I've taken that into, like I said, and then yeah, I think you just have this kind of confidence in yourself that you can just do anything, so I often find myself thinking, if I could row across an ocean, like I could do this, and it's stupid stuff like tax, or like just like everyday things, because it just becomes, it's not that you compare everything to the row, it's actually just that you realize that you can achieve anything, and for everyone. So if you don't really have that much confidence in yourself to do something in particular, all you really need to do is kind of just say, okay, what is it that I need to do to achieve this, and then actually do it. And then the other thing is, I realized that your set of values are like absolutely, it's kind of your foundation of anything. So our values was the acronym SPIRIT. So strength, perseverance, integrity, resilience, inspiration, and trust. And we lived by them. So I think, again, in a work environment, like, what are your values? What do you all work towards, and what do you all embody? And essentially, like, you all need to hold each other accountable for it. And then I completely just appreciate the little things. The like the little food pleasures that you could have, and so just kind of enjoy the little things, because we talked about them a lot on the ocean, and not just food, but like the people. Like, I've reconnected with a lot of the people in my life when I came back from the road, because I realized that actually they were really quite important in my life, and we've kind of lost touch along the way. So yeah, I think that's about it.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, there's, I guess, like you say, you've got to be before and after, but it's not the be all and end all. But I think in any scenario like that, something's got to change, and I think by listening to you, I think it's probably sounds like a really good thing for people to do, maybe not as extreme as that, but push yourself to do something that in your mind might seem quite extreme. Because when it's done, something does obviously change, and you go like, wow,
Absolutely.
You can relativize things,
Yeah, and it's honestly, I think, like a magical power to have that self-belief in yourself, and that, I think, kind of just comes from those little hurdles and just the little things that you achieve something and you're like, oh my gosh, that's awesome, I'm so proud of myself, and then you do something else and you're like, wow, I never thought I could do that. And you just, if you go through life kind of doing something that puts you out of your comfort zone, or that scares you, or whatever, I think you're basically setting yourself up for a really interesting and amazing life. I wanted to add something else to that as well, and now I can't remember. We've spoken about so many things. But yeah, I mean, I think we've basically covered it all.
Yeah, that's so cool. So, I mean, we will say thank you in a second. Before we do that, if people would like to get in touch with you, and I'm sure there's going to be many, that are just like want to follow you and your story and your progress and where you're going and everything like that, what's the best way for them to sort of check you out?
So I think social media is quite a good one. Obviously, like my Instagram account or Twitter. I think Instagram is just my full name, which is Lizanne Van Vuuren. And then, I mean, if anyone wanted to get in touch directly, my email address is lizanne.vanvuuren@gmail.com. I think. Cool. I think that's the easiest.
And we'll make sure we put that in the show notes, and especially the spelling if people are not sure of that one.
Amazing.
And but yeah, just from my side, first of all, just thank you so much. It's been really inspiring chatting to you, watching your journey. You're such an friendly, happy person, and still done such amazing stuff. Like you, and I just find that very inspiring. That you leading a normal, let's say in inverted commas, life, but you can still do stuff like that. Row across the Pacific, and I just think. We can all just do a little bit more in our lives to be a good person and still inspire others through doing interesting things. So just thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today. And we look forward to just checking you out in the future and one day come and kayak with you around the sea point.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much for having me. I think it's been one of the most interesting chats that I've had. You guys have been amazing and really have done your homework, which is really, it's just amazing. I guess I just want to kind of, if I can say one last thing, and just say that we kind of used the hashtag MyPacific because we kind of realized, during our journey that we were basically crossing the literal Pacific, but everyone has their own Pacific to cross, and whatever that means for them. I think if you're able to kind of draw inspiration from wherever, I think, kind of hold on to that and just kind of equip yourself to do it and, and enjoy it, I guess. And then I think people sometimes think that we were all these kind of extreme athletes and adventurous, and we were really just like 6 very normal, like ordinary, like in brackets, ordinary women who kind of have regular jobs, and so you don't have to be some like extreme athlete to be able to do adventures like this. And it doesn't have to be crossing the ocean, but just anything that kind of brings you joy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so amazing. One thing that we didn't actually talk about was the reason that you did the row, and that was like a great cause. You're raising money for breast cancer, and for what's the other one? The walking
with the wounded.
Walking with the wounded. Yeah. So we'll put all of those details as well in the show notes.
Thank
because
you.
it's for like such an amazing cause. And are people still able to donate if they want to?
Absolutely, yeah. On our website, coxlesscrew.com, you're able to go to the donate page and still donate to our charities.
Okay, that's amazing. Cool. Well, I just want to say, like, thank you so much. You say like you're normal girls, but to be honest with you, like to me, you're far from that, and I still can't believe that I'm like chatting to somebody that rode, like part of the Pacific, like for 97 days. Oh. And it just, for me, it's like incredible. And you're by no means normal, but at the same time, you have been so normal. You know what I mean? Like, it's been so cool chatting to you, and it's been lovely to hear the story, for you sharing all your awesome moments. I find it personally massively inspiring. And there's so much value in the chat, so many value bombs, so much motivation for people to actually be better versions of themselves. And I'm sure you have inspired so many people in this chat. So thanks a lot for being such a ridiculously awesome human. And we really do wish you all the best in the future. And like Craig said, hopefully we can enjoy a kayak with you or whatever with you in Cape Town at some point in the future, or in London if you come here. And
absolutely, let me know.
Yeah, and just have a great week, and we're rooting for you guys and you, and well done on everything you've achieved.
Oh, thanks guys, you've been amazing.
That's cool. Well,
cool stuff. Woo, thanks.
That was a great chat.
Great
chat.